What's special about Katelyn's story is her love of a challenge. After 13 plus years in healthcare, she's never done the same project twice. Katelyn thrives on problem solving and learning something new every day. Whether it's figuring out how to replace a critical piece of equipment without disrupting patient care, or adapting to surprises like the pandemic and supply chain delays, she's always ready to innovate. Get ready for a fascinating look at how Katelyn keeps a busy hospital running smoothly with creativity, resilience, and a lot of heart. Well, welcome everyone to Telling Your Asset Management Story. I'm pleased to have Katelyn here with me. Katelyn, it's a pleasure. It's the first time we've actually met, which is, so I really thank you for giving us your time, especially at the end of your vacation right after a move. So really appreciate that. Always like to start, I find it fascinating for people in facilities and asset management, the journey they've taken to get where they are, because I don't know many people who, when they're little kids, grow up and go, I want to be in facilities, right? So can you just, for myself, having just met you, and for our audience, just kind of tell us a little bit about your journey and how you ended up at Unity Health Toronto?
Okay, how far back do you want me to go? I did my undergrad degree in systems design engineering. And when I graduated, I did consulting for a little bit, lots of traveling with that, process improvement. I've always loved to be, efficiencies and all of that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, after doing that for a couple of years, I was ready to kind of return to put my engineering skills to the public service. And,
Nice.
and I really had always loved, I actually did a co-op term at St. Michael's Hospital.
Oh, nice.
And that's how I was first introduced to the hospital environment, and I wanted to return there. And I was brought back by my now senior director I was hired to start develop the infrastructure renewal program for St. Michael's Hospital at the time. And so that was how I first started back at the hospital. And then from there, my role has grown and expanded. Now it includes energy and sustainability work as well. But yeah, that was sort of the start to where I am, I suppose, now in a really short nutshell.
No. So you were in healthcare as a co-op during school, and then you came back to it. What was it about the healthcare environment that really, kind of drew you back in?
I think it's just the dynamic nature of it. Like, I have been at the hospital now for, is it 13 or 14 years? It's been quite some time.
Right.
And I don't think I've done the same thing twice ever.
Right.
So even two projects that might seem similar, like two air handling units or two chillers or two boilers, they're not the same. It really depends on the building that they're being installed in, as well as the services that they're providing. So the dynamic nature of the work was just really exciting to me. I'm a problem solver by nature.
Nice.
So I love learning. So I would always be learning about new types of equipment, MRIs, CT scanners, some of the clinical equipment, as well as the actual facility equipment as well. And just the amount of coordination that has to go on to replace something. It's not just, this pump is broken, let's fix the pump. It's like, when are we going to shut the pump down? And as I've progressed through my journey, I've also started thinking more and more about, okay, do we want to replace the pump with the same type of pump?
Right.
Or should it be a different kind of pump?
Right.
Technologies are expanding. There's new things out there. There's new opportunities and new synergies to be had between especially energy and sustainability as well.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, I think one of the things that I find the most interesting / challenging about healthcare facility asset management is having to do the work while also maintaining the patient spaces, right? And the, not just infection control, but like you say, okay, if we take this down, who does it impact? What is that going to impact from a surgery perspective, or from a physiotherapy perspective, or just from the patients in the rooms and things like that? So that adds a whole other layer of complexity, I think, to the whole approach.
It absolutely does, and the need to plan in advance to take advantage of things like seasonality, right? And we're going to do like a domestic hot water pump. Are we able to shut that down in a time when maybe hot water is less crucial to the facility? And thinking about that in advance,
right?
And then trying to factor in your lead times for your equipment, and so you're building this timeline. So when we went through things like COVID, or now we're dealing with the tariffs, and that really is impacting the ability for us to get material on hand, it really can throw us for a bit of a loop in terms of our schedule and planning.
Well, and there's less flexibility of movement because you have all these other external, from a facilities perspective, things impacting.
And I mean, in healthcare, and I'm sure this is true for other types of facilities as well, but we do not have storage at all.
Right.
At least specifically at our sites that are located downtown, we don't even have external land.
Sure.
Really,
it's the roads, right?
We're built up.
Yep.
Yeah. So, So yeah, maybe there's some store. Not even on the roof. Actually, our roofs are crowded also.
Right,
so
right.
There's
That's
really
so funny.
there's a lot of limitations. Yeah.
That's so funny. So you sort of mentioned kind of a little bit about your facilities. Tell us a little bit about your portfolio, the buildings that you manage, kind of the profile, that sort of thing. Just some background information on that.
So at Unity Health, we have 3 main hospital campuses that we own and operate. The one is located right downtown St. Michael's Hospital, which is where I started my career there. And when we integrated as Unity Health in the end of 2017, then St. Joseph's Health Center became part of the portfolio. So that's the one that you can actually see driving into the city from the Gardner.
Right.
And then we also have Providence Healthcare, which is our long-term care home, as well as our rehabilitation hospital, which is located up at St. Clair and Warden area. So 3 very different profiles. I suppose St. Mike's and St. Joe's are perhaps a little bit more similar, and they're both acute care facilities with some research labs and sort of things like that. But our Providence Healthcare with the long-term care and the residents, and they're not as, some of the areas aren't 24/7 the same way as our other 2 sites. So, but a different type of facility there as well. So. And then I suppose another interesting differentiator between our 3 sites also is the type of heating and cooling systems that we do have. So for our St. Michael's Hospital, which is located downtown, we're on district energy for steam.
On N-Wave?
We're
on
N-Wave? Yes,
oh, okay,
for steam though.
Oh, for steam? Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay.
Because we actually don't have access to the cooling. As of yet, those lines haven't been fully extended. So we have our chiller plant there. We have our district steam, and then the other 2 sites we have more your conventional chiller boiler type system. Although at Providence, our chiller plant is not centralized; it's decentralized, and then at St. Joe's we have a centralized plant. So, those are just some of the intricacies between them, and they're all very different. I think the only thing that's really kind of similar in common is the fact that the facilities have been built up over the years. So I kind of call it like a layer cake, right? Like you've got your, some of them were in the 1900s when they were built, and then all the way up to our 2000s when we have some of our, like our Peter Gilgan Tower opened in 2021. Actually, we opened it in the middle of COVID, so we could have more patient space for COVID patients at the time. So
it's interesting you said the term layer cake. I always use the term Frankenbuilding.
Okay.
Right? They've just built out and different parts bolted on here or there, but it certainly does add again that additional complexity of, okay, I've got a foundation that's 120 years old and I got a foundation that's 4 years old and I got 6 in the middle and roofs and everything else like that. For the renovations, were they, and just out of curiosity, were they localized to the additions, or did you kind of redo the whole building as you went?
So it's a mix. So we do renovations frequently within our existing facilities. So that's constantly ongoing. Depending, a lot of the time it's driven by sometimes age, sometimes by functional programming needs for the healthcare. Clinical side. And then we also have redevelopments, like brand net new buildings going on where we've demolished full parts
areas of a building,
full wings, and then building up brand new. So our Peter Gilgan Tower at St. Michael's was actually, we didn't demolish there. We had a tiny little parking lot left on our site, and that is where we built the 17-story patient care tower there. So yeah, it really is a mix of like net new and retrofits, and that also provides challenges with getting the same types of technologies and systems to work with one another. For example, and sometimes when you're doing a net new build, then it triggers having to expand, say, a nurse call or a fire alarm system, retrofit everything else to get it up to speed, or else they don't communicate with one another. So.
Well, then it's like having 10 buildings in one, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
No, it's interesting to hear. Think, oh well, we have three sites, but the complexity across those 3 sites feels like a lot more than a typical. Oh, I got 3 sites or three locations. So that's interesting. So when you look at kind of today where you're at, recognizing you have a very diverse portfolio, even though it's sort of all relatively localized in the area, what are the biggest challenges that you see and strategies that you're using to face those challenges? And if they're different from one site to another, feel like, again, I don't know enough about your portfolio, but don't limit it to, hey, this is things that are overall. If there's differences between long-term care and the acute care, would love to kind of dive into that a little bit too.
Yeah, there's so many things I could talk about. It's like, where do I start? Which
You don't
one do
have
I
to stop
pick?
at 3. Feel free, yeah.
So I would say, Unity Health is a very, we're a very large organization. And so we do have quite a few departments that are working in the redevelopment, the planning, the facilities teams as well.
Yep.
And we're all doing projects all the time,
Right.
whether it's a maintenance project or a new construction project. And so one of our challenges I find is the ability to know what everybody is doing,
Right.
so that you can take advantage of the opportunities that might exist,
Sure.
right? So if we're installing, say, a new air handling unit as part of a clinic renovation,
Right.
then from my perspective as the infrastructure renewal, I go, well, that's the perfect time to replace the roof if we need to. So, and then of course, in order to know if you need to have done that legwork in advance to figure out, what's the condition of my assets, and do I have that list of asset condition that I can go to and quickly and prioritize. Because we also have limited funds. And so if the roof it might be a 15-year-old roof, but if it's in working condition, then do we want to spend the money there, or do we need to spend it somewhere else? So figuring out how to prioritize with all of the different moving parts can be challenging. And as I mentioned before, also, I guess the other one is, do we want a like-for-like replacement?
Sure.
Of course, that also can sometimes take a lot of scoping, a lot of sometimes measurement, so that you're trying to understand. So if you wanted to say, replace your pump, but maybe you want to replace it with a slightly smaller pump. Okay, what loads can we offload, or how could we whether decentralize or centralize the system? Like, what are the opportunities? But doing all of that information gathering can be quite labor intensive and can take a lot of time. So, and of course, anyone in facilities management knows a lot of the time we are very reactive to what needs to be done right at that moment. Because especially in healthcare, the most important thing is operations. We need to make sure that we're staying operational. So sometimes our hand gets forced, and we just have to get something in there that's going to keep the facility up and running for the health and safety of our patients and our staff. So those are some of the challenges. I mentioned some of the ages of our facilities as well. So the wing we actually just demolished at our St. Michael's site was built in the 1900s. So it was quite old, and it's not alone in that. St. Joseph's also has some older from the 1950s as well. So we do have aging facilities and some of deferred maintenance that we're trying to work through the backlog. And of course, you think you're making progress, and then something else breaks that maybe was brand new, and you weren't expecting that. And so now you're having to look at that. Why did it fail? Because especially if something's new, or if it's a relatively new installation, the question is, was it programmed incorrectly in terms of sequence of operations? Did we, is there something wrong with our water treatment that it's adding scale buildup that's causing a premature failure? So
because you don't want to have another, put a brand new thing in and the same thing prematurely fail.
So
Absolutely.
It's a lot of, what do they call that? The post-mortem situation as well. We're trying to figure out what actually happened, so that we don't run into the same situation again, and we're constantly having to do the same replacement over and over again. So those are definitely some of the challenges I think that we face.
So you mentioned the team that you have. Obviously, you've got large scale sites, all of these different things. What does the overall facilities team, like the overall, like everybody who's involved in kind of operations, capital maintenance for these planning for these facilities, what does that team look like in terms of departments, number of staff, that sort of thing?
Well, I can. So in terms of number of staff, I don't have a number off the top of my head. From my department specifically, I have 9 full-time project managers that report into me. In terms of our facilities team, each of our sites has a designated manager of facilities operations. And within that, we actually have our own in-house trades on staff as well. So that would be anywhere between 30 to 50 at the 2 larger sites. And that's the day-to-day operation. So, if the light bulb burns out, if the toilet needs plunging, anything like that. And so that team works within the same portfolio as my team. And we both report into the same senior director. And then my team would take on what we would call a project.
Sure.
So of course there's a very gray line there as to what is a project
Sure.
versus what is a maintenance project.
Right.
And so we do work very closely together. And I also am in close contact with the facilities managers and the supervisors because I'm trying to gather information about what's happening day
Right.
to day and what sort of challenges they might be experiencing. It might not be something that's completely failed yet, but
Right.
they might say, you know, we're not able to really maintain temp very well on this, or we've got the VFD running on 100% on this fan and it really shouldn't be. So
That's the
trying-
whole variable part of variable frequency drive, right?
Exactly. So, and that ties all well into, in my portfolio specifically, I have our infrastructure renewal PMs, but I also have our energy and sustainability team.
Right.
So, and we share a lot of roles and responsibilities. Sometimes our energy PMs are doing infrastructure renewal projects if there's a large energy component, for example. So we help one another out there. It's a very sort of fluid structure in that way.
Nice.
And then we also have, separate from the facilities team and my portfolio, we also have our redevelopment and our planning teams.
Okay.
So they're looking after major capital renovations, as well as planning for our redevelopment. And so again, we also work closely hand in hand.
Sure.
Right now we're doing some planning for a redevelopment at our St. Joseph site, and I am working with those teams to determine, you know, what will our goals for sustainability look like,
Right.
what sorts of technology should we be considering for the new facility, as well as how does the new facility tie into, or maybe not tie into, our existing facility. Do we
Right.
go standalone? Do we go together? Do we try to connect headers together and deal with that? So there's pros and cons to both, obviously. And for anyone who's done that type of work before, they're going to know that, yeah, one centralized system is one throat to choke, but at the same time, you've got different technologies feeding into one system as well, which can add complexity. So
Right. So you talked a lot about the different departments and divisions, groups. So a lot of people that I talk to, a lot of our clients, a lot of folks in the facilities world, they deal with silos in organizations. So it sounds like you guys have kind of done a pretty good job of managing those different silos. And you've been there. You said you've been there for a while. Has there always, how have you managed, if there were silos before, kind of breaking them down, or how have you avoided building them up over time as things change and people change and process changes?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it can get, sometimes you get into your work and you're doing your project and you
Right.
forget about all the many people that might be interested in knowing what's going on, or might have some input that could actually make your outcome a better outcome at the end of the day. And I think I recognized that fairly early on when I started. I mentioned I was a senior project engineer brought on, and the first thing I decided, building an infrastructure renewal program, that I needed to know was what was going on in the day-to-day. So there was a daily morning huddle that would take place with our facilities managers and our supervisors, and I just started showing up. I was just, it's 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes. Okay, what's happening? What's the lay of the land today? And they would talk about, this pump was down, or this air handling unit's having troubles, or, this temperature is not being met, that type of thing. And I would start to collect that information.
Nice.
And that would help to inform strategy moving forward and priorities as well.
Right.
And so I think that is something that I've always tried to embody even moving forward. With our roof renewal program, for example, sure, we brought in an external consultant to do a roof assessment, take some sampling of moisture levels. But at the end of the day, we said, okay, that's great. We've identified that this roof is old and needs to be replaced, but where are we seeing issues now?
Right.
And then we would layer on the known areas of leaks that we had experienced, any other complaints that might have come in through our patients or our staff or our visitors. And then we would take all of that information together and help to drive the prioritization. So that information sharing is really important, and it's something I'm still working on.
Right.
It's a constant process, because now I'm trying to layer in the energy side of things as well, right? And so it's really about making sure that everyone is having those conversations, and then early on in the project, so that we can actually action some of the things and opportunities that we're finding.
Right. It's amazing how many things come down to communication, isn't it?
It
even
is
in
amazing.
even in a highly technical field like
is.
facilities, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, interesting. So we've talked a bunch about kind of the now and what you're facing now, just to try to turn our attention to the future. Given your experience, given your background, where do you see facility and infrastructure, asset management, capital planning, all of those things going, in the future, next 5 to 10 years?
So I've talked about this a little bit just in terms of like the synergies that exist and the opportunities we have when we are doing an asset renewal project. And I'm very passionate about sustainability, about energy, but I'm also very passionate about other things such as accessibility, equity, diversity, inclusivity. And so you might think, okay, what does that have to do with, replacing a pump or replacing an asset? But at the end of the day, like even on the maintenance side of things, are we providing the right maintenance access to these assets for our staff, right? And is it safe? And so thinking about all of those opportunities. And so a lot of the time, especially on some of our roof replacements, there might not have been the proper access platforms. Maybe the ladders weren't in the right places. And so instead of just saying, oh, well, we'll replace the roof project now becomes the ductwork insulation is falling off. And we need to, maybe there's some, in the city we have lots of pigeons. So maybe there's some cleanup that needs to be done at the same time. And maybe there's some opportunities there to add better access to our site. So there are lots of these sort of opportunities to find these synergies. And so I think that in moving forward, this is only going to become more of the trend, especially looking towards now, with carbon reduction and emissions reduction as well, and how to be more efficient with our resources also.
Nice. Yeah, I liken it to spinning plates, right? You've got all these different plates that are impacting the program, the performance, the functioning of the facility, and how do you make sure that you keep them all spinning, that you're considering all of those items as you look towards that prioritization, which is really how do we take the limited resources we have and put them to work for maximum value. Have you been able to, like, you mentioned sort of, originally you started showing up at meetings and you were absorbing things. Has your organization or your team found a way to automate that or make it less human-based, or is it still mostly, again, that communication, that dialogue, that participation? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think things happen very quickly. I'm sure in many different industries, but in healthcare specifically, our priorities are often shifting from one to when one day we're all fine and then the next day COVID is happening, and so now we're all focused on that, or we might have the tariffs have come in, or I'm just using these are more recent examples, but there's always priorities that are shifting. So at the end of the day, it's hard to automate something like that. It's hard to put that into a mechanics of a system. So we still have our, between those departments I mentioned earlier, the redevelopment, and our department and facilities, we have a project list meeting. And through that, we all get together once every other week and go through the projects. So all the PMs sort of talk about where their projects are at, what's going on. And that gives us an opportunity to prime our ears, because we have to be listening. It can't just be like, oh, those projects are happening, but actually thinking about, oh, they're doing a project where they're installing a new garden. Oh, is there an opportunity to install a rainwater cistern there, or whatnot? So trying to coach the team to think and listen effectively in order to find those hidden gems that might otherwise just pass us by.
Excellent. One last question. Obviously, you mentioned COVID a couple of times, and that had a huge impact on the entire world of facility and asset management. But for healthcare, pretty much more than anybody. And you also mentioned the T word, tariffs, that are sort of the new external force that's impacting a lot of facility and asset managers. Are there any lessons that you and your team learned from COVID that you think will help you navigate this uncertain, for lack of a better term, world of will they, won't they tariffs?
Well, in terms of COVID, I think what we learned from that was the importance of having flexibility in our systems, as well as added redundancy. So having the ability to, run our fans at 100% outdoor air was something that, we thought, okay, we might want to consider that moving forward. there was also a lot of uncertainty about what was the right thing to be
Sure, of
doing
course.
at that
Yeah,
time
yeah.
too. So being able to pivot quickly and make those changes. So flexibility for sure in the system. So
Nice.
when we're installing something new, we think about, should we leave extra space if we have it,
Right.
for a second pump to come in later, or for a temporary connection. So if we have a failure, can we bring in a temporary generator or a temporary
Right.
boiler or something like that? So we're thinking more towards resiliency and redundancy to make ourselves more adaptive to these sorts of situations. For the tariffs, to be honest, I don't know yet.
Sure. Yeah, it's very early days.
It's very early days. I mean, we're doing contract review for anything that's existing,
Right.
but thinking about future, especially construction contracts as well. Is there an opportunity to pre-order materials? But then again, you're taking a risk, right?
Yeah.
Like, is that the right thing for us
Sure.
to be ordering? Is that the
Right.
right design? And so,
Well, and once you have to start warehousing, there's cost. Like, as you said, you don't have space, so you have to start
Yeah.
dealing with the cost of that as well, right?
and so, and this is actually the approach I've been taking, or I'm starting to look at doing on the energy side of things. And our decarbonization plan is actually partnering with somebody, with an external, whether it's a consortium or a contractor or whatnot, someone who gets to know our facilities, so that we can have these conversations early on.
Right.
The traditional design, bid, build model is very restrictive and
Right.
very single line. Like, you can't do things in parallel, right? So this way, having a partner in crime, shall we call it, we can have those spitballing conversations at any point in time, and then start to put things in place sooner rather than later.
Cool. And what mechanism have you used to find those partners that you're talking to?
Well, for our decarbonization it was an RFP that we had. Well, we had to. We're broader public sector directive compliance, so we had to go out to open market. And to be fair, that's the best way to do it. But we are looking at doing not just a one-time project that way. We're looking at having more of a long-term agreement. So I think there are some opportunities to be had there, potentially things we could leverage as well on the infrastructure renewal side. Handrails replacement, for example, instead of doing one project at a time, can we have a unit pricing mechanism set up so that we have one vendor that we can call in at any time and say, okay, we've determined, like, this area is going to be empty tomorrow. Can we come in and do the work, instead of having to, we need a design package, we need a pricing package, we need bidders to come and bid on it. So looking at how we can be a little bit more flexible.
Okay, cool. Have you looked at cooperative procurement at all at the hospital?
What do you mean by group buy organizations?
Yeah, grouping buy.
Yes, we're part of all of those also. A lot of our clinical work is group procured.
Right. Excellent.
But we also, most of our project work currently is one-offs because the project scope is so individual and so unique. But definitely for anything that we're doing that might have more of a group sort of connotation to it, then we definitely are involved with those organizations. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Katelyn, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming in. Thank you to our audience for joining us on another episode of Telling Your Asset Management Story. We'll see you next time. Thanks. We hope you enjoyed hearing Katelyn's story as much as we did. Her journey from private sector consulting to making a real difference in hospital infrastructure shows how following your passion can lead to profound impact. Katelyn reminded us that asset management in healthcare is anything but routine, and that's a good thing. She finds excitement in the fact that no two projects are the same, using that variety to keep learning and innovating. We also learned how much thoughtful planning and flexibility it takes to keep a hospital running, whether she's scheduling upgrades around patient care or building in extra resiliency after COVID-19. Katelyn's blend of technical savvy and heart for service truly shines through. Thank you, Katelyn, for sharing your unique perspective on infrastructure asset management, and thank you for listening to Telling Your Asset Management Story. Until next time, keep celebrating those who care for the spaces that care for us.